In the study's own words, which should have been enough to discredit it from consideration for publication in a scientific journal, quote, the panel believed that for the majority of individuals, the desirable effects, a potential lowered risk for cancer and cardiometabolic outcomes associated with reducing meat consumption probably do not outweigh the undesirable effects, impact on quality of life, burden of modifying cultural and personal meal preparation and eating habits, unquote. Think about it. A study that made headlines international as if it offered some exciting new research contradicting the scientific consensus against red meat consumption was in fact no more than the result of applying a preposterous methodology to the existing evidence. Give fewer points to all the evidence that red meat consumption leads to heart attacks and cancer. Give more points to the assumption that people really enjoy their sausages and don't want to give them up. You could make the case for cigarette smoking and even heroin use with a methodology like that. If you're surprised to find highly opinionated language about the, quote, burden of modifying cultural and personal meal preparation in a journal once believed to concern itself with science, well, it's just more evidence that in the ongoing tussle between science and culture, culture keeps winning. Even scientific journals appear willing to abandon the fortress of science to flock to the winning side. The study's august panel, by the way, voted 11-3 for these recommendations. There were 3 dissenters who favored a tougher stance against meat, but this was a case of majority rules. The science of nutrition, it turns out, is a democracy. Who knew? You present the evidence and then you allow a group of non-scientists to take a vote. I once had a letter to the editor published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. I was critiquing a study they had published that had again made national headlines. It was a study that claimed that eating dairy helps prevent diabetes. Now, I knew that the exact opposite is true. Dairy, because it is fatty, helps trigger diabetes. In my opinion, this is elementary stuff. So how did the researchers design their study? This time they really did do a study. Congratulations to them on that. But it was a self-reporting study with a large number of participants. The subjects reported what they ate, and the researchers then managed to confusingly label each dish they ate as either dairy, non-dairy, or a, quote, mixed dish. What's a mixed dish? The researchers excluded foods for which the, quote, contribution of dairy to the weight or caloric content of the item was unclear or likely to be minimal. Such mixed dishes included pizza and cheeseburgers. Thus, for example, a study participant could have eaten 3 double cheese pizzas in a day, but his daily intake would not have been counted as a dairy day if he did not drink milk. So if a guy ate double cheese pizzas every day but never drank milk, then got diabetes, that would somehow prove that you're more likely to get diabetes if you don't consume dairy. How insane is that? So I contacted the lead researcher, spoke with him by phone before I submitted my letter to the editor. I said, hey, here's a suggestion. If you really want to know the effect of dairy on diabetes, why don't you construct a trial with 2 cohorts with otherwise similar diets, ideally plant-based diets, but one cohort consumes dairy and one doesn't. I mean, what could be more obvious than that, right? The man actually said to me, gee, that's an interesting concept. Did he actually ever conduct that study? Of course not. That could be because he wasn't interested in learning the truth. Should we think of nutrition as a controversial subject in which serious scientists disagree about whether meat is healthy? No. All serious nutritional scientists know that meat is unhealthy. There are legitimate disagreements on minor issues like, is a glass of red wine a day healthy? They disagree on that. They disagree on coffee. Does coffee offer health benefits? That remains unresolved. But there's no real scientific debate on meat, because all serious scientists know that meat contributes to obesity and heart disease and diabetes and inflammation in the body and offers no nutrients that you can't get in better form from eating plants. This is not in dispute. The science is settled, period. To dispute the fact that meat is profoundly unhealthy for human beings is to take a scientifically insane position. I'm not saying that the people who take that position are themselves insane. I'm just saying that their position is insane, whether or not they happen to be. I've just explained to you why and how you may have been misled into thinking that there's some kind of controversy about the impact of meat on our health. There isn't any legitimate controversy. It's much like climate change. Some people think that the issue of whether we face man-made climate change is controversial. It isn't. There are no serious climate scientists who deny the reality of anthropogenic climate change. Only maybe the occasional nutcase. Those arguing that nothing is wrong with the climate are either frauds or people who don't understand the science. I'm not calling them scientifically ignorant, but they don't even seem to be watching the news. Anyone who looks at the storms we've been facing and the 1,000-year floods happening every year and the droughts and the unprecedented heat waves and wildfires knows that we're facing a climate emergency created by humans. It is not in serious dispute. Similarly, we know beyond a shadow of a doubt, with no serious disagreement, that the healthiest diet is a whole food, plant-based, or I like to say plant-exclusive diet, a vegan diet that's low in fat and ideally free of oil and sugar. The question then is, why do only 2% of Americans eat the healthiest human diet? Why are roughly 98% of Americans doing the stupidest thing you could possibly do and eating animal products? Again, many Americans are confused. They've either believed the hucksters selling them books based on the paleo diet, or they've been confused, as I've just explained, by misleading and bogus pseudoscientific studies that are often paid for by agribusinesses. But I think at least equally important is the fact that many Americans just don't think about it much. Remember, nutrition isn't everybody's top concern. Look, if you're a young, healthy person, you may be putting your energies into pursuing a career, studying or starting to work in a field that you're passionate about. Or maybe you're not so focused on a career, but you're putting your energies into working a job, any kind of job, trying to get by, maybe saving for a house. And whether you're studying or working, you may also be putting your energies into your relationships, perhaps getting married, hoping to get married, start a family. And then once you do have kids, then your focus turns to your kids, giving them a good life. And the years go by with all kinds of other interests on your mind, and you never think a lot about nutrition. It's not everyone's pet subject. It doesn't have to be. You just know you need to eat about 3 meals a day to get energy, and you do it almost unconsciously. And you know that what you like to eat and what you don't like to eat and what restaurants you like, and that's about all the attention you give it. You just eat what's normal, and you choose a few favorite normal foods that you like to eat often. I'm sure that's a pretty good characterization of how many millions of Americans view food. Their lack of concern about what they're eating may be understandable. I also need to point out that, sorry, but it's also pretty dumb. Again, I'm not calling anybody stupid. I'm saying people are making a stupid mistake if they never think about the health effects of the food they're shoving into their mouths at least 3 times a day. You're not being too bright when you just assume that the food you're eating is really food. Why would you believe that it's nutritionally adequate and appropriate for your body? I mean, look around, for Christ's sake. If you're eating like other Americans, just look around. Have you ever noticed how other people who are eating just like you are extraordinarily obese? Can you not see us for what we are? The fattest, sickest population ever to walk planet Earth? Isn't this obvious? Do you think this is normal? If you've noticed, even the mannequins in the clothing stores are putting on weight. Until recently, obese was not another word for normal. When I was a kid, kids weren't obese. When I was a kid, kids weren't prone to what we used to call adult onset type 2 diabetes. And I was a kid not so very long ago, at least in a geological time frame. Consider the fact that more Americans died from COVID than any other population. Why is that? Because we're the fattest, sickest population in the history of the planet. And COVID targets those with comorbidities, especially obesity. Now, if you yourself are fat and sick, then you really should be extra motivated to change what you're doing. But even if you're not yet fat and sick, if you're eating the way other people eat, wouldn't the smart thing to do be to realize, hey, maybe I'm eventually going to get fat and sick if I keep eating the foods that these fat and sick people around me are eating? I mean, really, is that too hard to figure out? All Americans should be questioning the obviously defective, bizarre, pathologically unhealthy American diet. Now, I have repeatedly used the phrase fat and sick, and some might find that harsh. Some might object, well, I may be fat, but I'm in good health. No, you're not. I'm not fat shaming anyone. I'm not making fun of anyone. But if you're fat, you're sick. Obesity is a disease state. Obesity weakens your immune system and makes you more prone to infections, to autoimmune diseases, to colds and flu and pneumonia. It increases your risk of a whole host of cancers, breast cancer, colon cancer, pancreatic cancer, and many more. It dramatically increases your risk of diabetes and heart disease, as well as your risk of dying from COVID. There's no such thing as being fat and healthy. Have you seen many fat centenarians? Just ask yourself, why, if Americans spend far more than any other nation on earth on healthcare, why are we so short-lived and so fat and sick? Isn't it the obvious that it's the food? What else could it be? It's foolish to make the assumption that the food we're eating is normal, healthy food. It's normal only in the sense that so many Americans are eating it. By all other metrics, it's abnormal food. It isn't human food. Maybe people don't realize this fact because just like it's normal in this country to eat food that isn't human food, it's normal in this country to be fat and sick. In a nation with 42% obesity, you're considered remarkably slender if you're only a little bit fat. So if nutrition isn't an important subject to you, and if you don't think about it much, then I understand that. But sorry, you may be brilliant, but you're making a stupid mistake. Look, you may not be intellectually interested in the respiratory system either, but if there's a lot of smoke in the air and you're having trouble breathing, you pay attention. You might ask yourself if there's a fire nearby. Presumably, you want to be healthy and you want to live. So if you would escape the smoke that might kill you, you have to escape the animal fat that may kill you. You have to acquaint yourself with nutrition as a matter of vital importance and ask yourself some basic questions. Like this one, for example. Why do people eat pigs and cows and chickens and turkeys? Why those particular animals? Who made that rule? Think about it. There's this beautiful planet Earth full of the most exquisite diversity of plants and animals. There are millions of animal species out there. There are thousands of bird species. So why do we eat chickens and turkeys and not crows and pigeons and seagulls and penguins? There are thousands of mammal species. Who decided that we should eat pigs and cows? If you believe in a creator, do you think that the creator said, okay, I'm going to create millions of animals and I'm going to create humans? And the humans can eat the cows and the pigs and the chickens and the turkeys. Those will be the food animals. So the humans can breed them and keep them in close quarters and in warehouses and guard them from predators and feed each of those animals the other animals' blood and manure, and then the people can eat them. Who among us believes that that was part of the creator's plan? Now, if you don't believe in a creator, but believe that natural forces and evolution created our world, why would humans evolve alongside their mostly vegan cousins, the great apes, and not eat a diet of plants as our cousins do? You won't find many great apes eating cows and pigs and turkeys and chickens. And why do we eat those particular animals instead of, say, squirrels and raccoons and kangaroos and foxes and bears? Is this based on some kind of science? Is there any scientific basis for considering some animals food animals and other animals off limits for eating? Did any scientist ever do a study and determine that the people who ate cow had better health outcomes than the people who ate horse or rat or snake? Of course not. Before humans came along, land wasn't set aside for the grazing of cows and sheep. Pigs didn't live in crates in warehouses, and chickens didn't crowd on top of each other in warehouses either. This is all unnatural, and it exists because businesses make a lot of money peddling the lie that some animals are food animals. In fact, cows aren't even a natural species. Humans bred them from oxen. And the biologically distorted chickens that people eat are hardly a natural species either. Why don't we eat dogs and cats and horses? Well, that's obvious. It's because people bond with dogs and cats and horses, so they couldn't imagine eating them. But there's no reason to believe that dogs and cats and horses are any smarter than pigs and cows, or that pigs and cows don't experience pain in the same way as dogs and cats and horses. And in some places in the world, people do eat dogs and cats and horses. So who made these rules that we follow, and why do we foolishly follow them? Just think of the horrors we inflict on pigs, keeping them in crates for their whole lives where they can't move, can't turn around, castrated and with their tails docked. They live short lives, suffering in their own waste, and then we slaughter them. If anyone did that to one stray dog, they'd go to prison. But agribusinesses do that to millions of pigs. Who made pigs food? Why not raccoons or snakes? Actually, in some parts of the country, people do hunt and eat raccoon, and snake soup is apparently eaten in China. So you see, any animal can be eaten, but no animal, including pigs, is actually human food. All flesh is pretty much the same. It's fat and protein, no carbohydrate, no fiber, little water, few micronutrients, lots of toxins.